Hey guys, welcome back. Joe Brunsman, Insurance Broker to the Stars. And today, a topic near and dear to my heart, and that is what I really wish MSPs knew and understood about cyber insurance applications. So let's go ahead and jump on into it. All right, first thing is let's kind of add some gravity to what we're talking about here. I think it's easy to dismiss the terms insurance application and insurance policy. I think what we really need to think of these as is really a legal contract. And like I said before, I think that adds a little more gravity to what we're talking about. Now, when you're applying or you're assisting your clients in complying with those legal contracts, you may just see some questions on there that are patently absurd. Now, I try and do my best to avoid putting out applications that have these types of questions, but an example would be, are you HIPAA compliant? Check yes or no, or true or false. Well, I'm not really even sure how you logically answer that question because, as we know, compliance is more of a journey, not really a destination. And does it mean you're HIPAA compliant as of the second you answer that question? Does it mean that you're HIPAA compliant throughout the entire year? If there's something that changes in your network, does that mean that there's some sort of material change provision inside of that questionnaire or inside of the policy itself, where then you have to notify the insurer? It just opens up all of these kind of like weird what ifs that make that just a very poor question to ask that I think is just ripe for leading to a declination of coverage. Another one that I saw out there was, are you compliant with all applicable state and federal cybersecurity and privacy laws? For the life of me, I don't even know why they would ask this question. It's just so absurd to me. First of all, you'd have to know what all of those applicable laws are, which is likely impossible for most businesses out there. Second, you would have to really kind of figure out how those laws are even interpreted. And frankly, a lot of the case law just isn't out there yet. So there's some major provisions inside of these laws, and we just don't know what they actually mean in practice yet because maybe the wording is vague, or the interpretations have been somewhat vague, or the administrative bodies that are overseeing these regulations haven't really put out any further guidance on that. So we're not really even entirely sure how you could answer that question, even if you were trying to be 100% truthful. All right, next is, don't think that this is just all on your shoulders. You could see a lot of ambiguous nonsense out there, and I've seen some pretty awful applications for cyber insurance. So don't be afraid to make that underwriter or that broker or that agent actually do their damn job and think about what they're asking. Now, first off, there's nothing that says you can't just add an addendum. So if you catch yourself in a situation where it's do you do X, Y, Z, and it's, okay, sort of we do that, or kind of, or we have an equivalent alternative to that, whatever that unique case may be for that business, it's worth just knowing that you could add a piece of paper at the end or an email at the end, as you submit that application, and it's just kind of explaining that particular question. So the benefit of that is you're putting the onus back on, say, the broker, the agent, the underwriter, to hopefully understand what you're getting at there, as opposed to you having to decipher something which may be undecipherable or really just vague in all the wrong ways. So if you catch yourself in a position where you're sitting there and you're looking at that question and you're like, well, I'm not really sure what they're getting at. I'm not entirely sure what that term even means. Don't be afraid to ask them to define their own terms. Now, generally, and I say this, unfortunately, most brokers and agents out there selling cyber insurance really have no idea what they're doing. So most likely what's going to happen is you'd have to put those questions together, send them to the client. The client has to send them to the broker. It's probably going to go to the underwriter, possibly to the head underwriter or somebody else inside of the insurance company there, and then all the way back down. So it's worth getting that process done early so that way you have plenty of time to work through any potential issues or additional questions that underwriter might have before they issue a quote, aka terms. All right, next, I really want everyone to just think about liability. So that's your liability and that's their liability, being your clients. Now, if you remember nothing else from this presentation, it's the following. Your job is not to unnecessarily make your client look good to me or any other broker or any other underwriter out there. Your job is really just to be 100% forthright in the answers that you're recommending your client put on that application. So when you think about it, if you're not 100% forthright on there and you're trying to make them look good, right? Because I understand it's a business. If you do that, well, first of all, now your insurance could be implicated because if it turns out that their insurance denied them coverage because that answer wasn't 100% truthful and it was some sort of misrepresentation material to that risk, well, then they could come after your insurance, and that's going to be bad for you. It's also bad for them because possibly they won't have insurance. And you have to think about their premiums. Now, understand, you want to be a good business person. You want to help your clients save money. But quite frankly, cyber insurance is still so affordable that with really some very apparent exceptions, any additional information you put on that application, right? Any additional fluff that would be put in there, it's not going to materially lower their premium anyway. So a lot of it is just thinking about, okay, if you try to make them look good, we have a whole bunch of additional downside and very, very little upside. So please don't just try and make your client look good. Be 100% forthright with what your recommendations are for that application. Also understand, you may not have all of the answers there. So if a client just throws the application at you and they're like, hey, fill this out, please. Some of those questions you just wouldn't be able to answer because you are not operating inside of their business at any one time. So there's all of these various sections that you can kind of break an application down into. So if it's policies and procedures, legals and compliance, some of that stuff you're just not going to know because that's not your role for that organization. So don't be afraid to kick some of those questions back, say, hey, we don't have enough information, or to really answer this, maybe we need to meet with the head of HR and legal to actually answer these series of questions here to try and keep you out of trouble. If you want to see a great example of what happens if you don't answer an application 100% truthfully, there is a case in my book there, Columbia Casualty v. Cottage Health Systems, and you can read all up on that. And I actually took screenshots of the application from the actual court case, and that led to about, I believe it was $4 million some odd in uninsured claims eventually. All right, next, I just want everyone to think of this as, kind of changing the dynamic. So understand, as an MSP, you're probably like, great, I have another insurance application that a client wants me to fill out. And you don't get paid any additional money for that, and it could really be a pain. Well, first of all, I really would hope that you guys are using that application, as I do, as an opportunity to speak to those clients about these things. So controls, processes, and procedures, and various, potential compliance requirements that they have. If you need additional assistance with that, there's a copy of my book you can download for free at the end of this presentation. But those are really just great ways where, hey, even if it's not going to save them money, or even a substantial amount of money on their premium there, you can actually just kind of sit down with that person. And if you have enough no's checked on the control section, you can start saying, maybe now's a good time we revisit that conversation we had about multi-factor authentication, or maybe now's a good time that we talk about why we're still not doing security awareness training, or a lot of those really fundamental controls that you and I both know far too many businesses don't have in place. Now, what actually does bring trouble? I don't want to delve too far into this because this actually gets very, very technical. But here's an example. In an insurance contract, a material misrepresentation, which I talked about before, occurs when the insured makes an untrue statement that is material to the acceptance of the risk. So that means that, you said, hey, we have a firewall, but it turns out you didn't have a firewall. That would be a possible example there. And would have changed the rate at which insurance would have been provided. So that would be, let's say, the premium is kind of a good synonym for that. Or would have changed the insurer's decision to issue the contract. So, that could be, hey, if we knew they didn't have a firewall, then we would have charged 10 times more for this premium, or we just wouldn't have even offered these terms anyways, because internally we see that the risk would have been too high to offer cyber insurance here. Now, what's the remedy for this for the insurer? So declination of coverage, aka a rescission of the policy. And if you really want to learn more about this particular topic, there's a great article you can read here. This is from just a couple years ago, but I think it has a pretty good synopsis that a lot of MSPs would probably find pretty useful of what really is that material misrepresentation, gets into a lot of the case law so that you could actually kind of see how courts interpret this. A lot of it does get into the finer nuances of insurance law. So if I could say anything, it would be, don't poke the bear, don't play the game, just be 100% forthright with those answers. All right, with that, if you enjoyed this presentation, this is Damage Control Cyber Insurance Compliance. That is where you can download it for free. If you enjoyed this presentation, please like, share, comment, subscribe, warn your buddies out there in the MSP community. And with that, stay safe.